listen to I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King, that we all can be free. So we set out and we met at a little tea shop on Monroe Avenue, met with city officials, other persons in the media, TV and radio station owners and presidents. We decided to integrate every restaurant and hotel in the city of Memphis. Also to bring busing in the schools and to make Memphis a change city. Because of that, we were able to make those changes. In 1968, around 67, I ran for the city council. The first city council ever in the city of Memphis. Memphis government changed from a commission form of government, where we had 5 heads, 5 commissioners who were all 3 departments of the system in their hands. They were the administrators, the justice, the law, and everything that is done in that department. One man had the word to give the last word on it. So the system changed, and I became one of the first elected city councilmen of the city of Memphis. There were 3 blacks and 10 whites, 13 of us all together. Shortly after we were elected, we set out to make those changes in the city of Memphis. We went to Atlanta to see what they were doing, and we were just gung-ho. We were going to make everything good for Memphis because all of us were elected because our earnest interest in changing Memphis. We had no personal interest, no showcasing, nothing but to make Memphis a better place in which to live. Before we could get those things that we had learned in Atlanta put into effect, the sanitation workers decided to call a strike. That brought chaos into the city of Memphis. It went so long and so tough until we decided, in fact, Reverend James Lawson, I believe he's going to come here in a few days. Reverend Billy Cowles, I believe he's coming also in a few days. By the way, Billy Cowles and I are called jailbirds. We are the 2 preacher jailbirds for the city of Memphis. He'll tell you about that when he comes. But they were able to get King to decide to come to Memphis, change his plans of going to Chicago for poor people's march there. To come to Memphis to help us to change the mayor's mind and give the unions what they were asking for. The union were asking for 3 major changes. 3 major changes. One was union recognition. The other was dues checkoff. And the third and most importantly was the improving in working conditions. And if you know what working conditions were like at that time, let me share just for a moment what it was like. First of all, they were making only 90 cents an hour. That was not enough money to take care of their families. Many of them were on welfare. And the condition was so terrible until when they got finished with their job during the day, they had to go home with those dirty clothes on, riding the buses, if you please. But now, when I say dirty clothes, let me describe to you what dirty means. And that day, they picked up garbage in tubs, metal tubs. They went into your backyard and they poured the garbage out of your garbage bin into that tub. And all of the junk that was in your garbage can went up on top of their heads. And they carried that tub back to the truck and dumped it in. After several trips of that tub, metal developed holes, cracks, and that slimy smelling stuff that came out of your garbage would drip on their clothing. And they had to keep those clothes on and go home on the bus because they were not allowed to go into the room where the garbage workers, the white garbage workers were going there. They call it the barn, to change clothes. They had to wear those clothes home. So they had every right to want changes in working conditions. Another incident that brought this home to us, a storm came up one day, and the white driver on that bus, on that truck, they were driving, picking up garbage. He went into the barn to take shelter. Two of those black men on that truck could not go into that barn out of the shelter, out of the storm. So they took shelter in the back of the truck where the garbage is thrown in, and a packer presses that garbage into a small area in the back of the truck so they could carry a large amount of garbage to the den. Somehow, either the lightning struck it or there was a malfunction in the switch of that packer. And those two men were crushed to death in a garbage truck with the rest of the garbage in that truck because they couldn't go in the barn and change clothing because of their color. Martin Luther King came to Memphis. We began to walk and talk about changes. The last March that I remember before his tragic death in Memphis, as a member of the city council, the three of us, Joe Patterson, the late Joe Patterson now, who passed away last year, Fred Davis and myself are the only two blacks still alive. We were on the line immediately behind King. And there's a group of young people in Memphis called the Invaders. This was a black militant group who did not necessarily believe in Martin Luther King's philosophy of nonviolence. They believed in fighting fire with fire. And in that march, with King leading on the front line, the three of us on the second line, or maybe 1,000 people marching in that day, those invaders started throwing concrete boulders in the plate glass windows down on Main Street. When they decided to do that, when the noise was heard of those boulders being thrown in the plate glass windows, the policemen and the National Guards who were marching along beside us started throwing tear gas in the crowd. And I was so concerned, as others were, to get King out of the way, out of the melee, and the crowd was stampeded then. I did not notice that a bomb had fallen right down in front of me. I was blinded. I fell to the ground, to the street. Police came over and started kicking and beating me. And two young men, and I learned 20 years later who they were. They knew me, but I didn't know them. They fell on me and covered me with their bodies. Said to the police officers, "Don't you know this is a city official? You are kicking and beating like this?" And of course, the policeman said, "I don't give a damn who he is. Get him out of here, we're going to kill his black so-and-so." Those two boys picked me up and walked me down a block away on Front Street and stayed with me until my eyes opened where I could find my way to safety. I wish I could tell you some more about meeting them later, 20 years later, but for the night, let me rush on. A few days later, Martin came back to the city to have another speech. And that was the night the storm was raging, and he made that speech. And he said, "I've been to the mountain, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I've seen the promised land. Don't give up." One of the greatest speeches I've ever heard, in addition to the first one, "I Have a Dream," with that speech, the last speech he made in Memphis, Tennessee. The next day, at the Lorraine Motel, he was prepared to go to dinner with Billy Cowles at his home. They were getting ready, and he walked out on the balcony. Billy was standing down on the ground in the parking lot, chiding him, "Man, you're always late. Come on, get out of here. Dinner's gonna be cold." He said, "Oh man, your wife she knows I'm gonna be late. She's gonna hold my dinner for me." In a few minutes, a shot was heard. Martin Luther King fell to the floor. I was in the Claridge Hotel across the street from City Hall on the 9th floor with 9 council persons in the room. We had met with mediators from Washington, D.C. and the AFL-CIO union. And in that meeting, we had agreed as city council persons to give the sanitation workers everything they were asking for. We couldn't sign a contract with them, but they call it a memorandum of understanding. We had decided to take this to the city council the next day. We knew it that the mayor was so big-headed, he was going to kill the resolution, he was going to block it, veto it. But 9 persons on the city council could override the mayor's veto. So we had it in the bag. We just finished that resolution. We received a phone call. One of the council persons' wife called and said, "Turn the TV on. Martin Luther King has just been shot." I went hysteria. I said, "He's dead. They've killed my man." They tried to comfort me and said, "Wait, Jim, wait till they get to the hospital with him. He may be all right." I said, "No, man, they've killed my man." Surely enough, when he got to the hospital, he was pronounced dead on arrival. They took more to try to console me. But when I really lost it all was when 2 of those white council persons in the room that day said, "Gentlemen, I can't go to the council with this resolution because my constituents will feel that I am acquiescing under pressure. And I can't live with that." And because we had lost 2 of those council persons that weighed up to 9 that was needed to override the mayor's veto, that resolution was lost. But the irony of it all was 30 minutes before Martin Luther King was shot, those 9 council persons in that room with me had approved to give the sanitation workers everything they were asking for. And now he was dead, and he would never know as a live being that what he came to Memphis to fight for and died for was accomplished 30 minutes before his death.